You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. I have a lot of really cool friends who do a lot of really cool things. I wanted to make it a goal to sit down with these friends and spend about 15 minutes or so getting to know them better and find out about their past, present, and their future. The result is this show. My name is Grant Baciocco, and this is 15 Minutes With. Amanda Maddock is a puppeteer, a puppet builder, and a puppet artist, and we are going to talk about all those things because Amanda Maddock is my guest today. Hello, Amanda. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's good to finally get together and talk.
Yes, we've been trying to set this up for a while, and the day has arrived. We're going to talk about all the puppet stuff you are involved in, but I wanted to go back to the beginning. Do you remember the first creative thing that you kind of captured your attention as a kid?
First creative thing that captured my attention as a kid.
Like, were you into drawing, or were you into singing?
I was super into drawing when I was a kid. Yes, absolutely. That was definitely the thing that was, start drawing whatever I was inspired by, probably starting around age 9 or 10, and all of a sudden, you look up and 1 hour or 2 hours has gone by and you had no idea, just sort of happily drawing away. That was very strong memories of that stuff. Yes. And
were you drawing what were you do you know what subjects you were drawing?
I seem to remember okay, so I had quite an extensive Barbie collection as a kid, dolls to then Barbies. I was really into Barbies and making up Barbie scenes, actually, like Barbie installations. And so I think from that kind of thing, then I would be drawing a beach scene, and I'd draw people in the water and people at the beach and a family doing something and somebody drinking under the umbrella and people. So that's those kind of full-on scenes. Kind of I think probably, the 10-year-old girl version of, do you remember those Richard Scarry Busy World books? There's all this stuff going on, but from the point of view of a 10-year-old girl. So a lot of people, and this was the 80s too. So a lot of girls with their hair in a side ponytail and mini skirts and stuff.
At the beach?
Yeah, at the beach. Maybe at the mall.
Yeah.
Like that. All the important places.
Were your parents creative at all? Or are they creative at all?
I mean, they encourage creativity. My mom has always been a good artist drawer as well, not of her own admission, but whenever I was like, Mom, what is a whatever, or can you show me what somebody's face looks like in profile, and she could sort of whip off something pretty amazing. But she's a huge perfectionist, and so that I think is the thing that has always defeated her, because she used to make all our clothes when we were little kids, and she used to cook and do all these sorts of things, and she's like, I always kind of hated it because I agonized over if it wasn't perfect, and I'm like, that sucks. It's too bad, because you're good at a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So and then my dad was always pretty fun and playful and things like that. So I'd say they were encouraging, but not necessarily anything that I saw per se of their own stuff.
Right. Well, making clothes and even cooking are very creative.
Yeah. That is
Do you think you have some of your mom's perfectionism built into you?
I do. It was, which I actually am thankful for now that I'm sort of older and more patient. There's a lot of projects I probably did in my teens and 20s. They'd be like, I just want to get it done, good enough. And then nowadays it's like, oh, that didn't come out how I wanted it to. Well, I'm going to stare at it forever if I don't actually go back and redo this. And why not? Let's make it how you want it to be. I have a great example of that.
Yes.
I taught myself, I had to knit in college, and I got really into it. And I was one of those kids that would try to knit in my large lecture class and stuff, which didn't work out so well, but it was great to also try to do when you're watching TV or movies or something like that. And on one school break, I got this very intricate sweater pattern, all this cabling, honeycomb patterns, and it was this really cool sweater, and I got this beautiful yarn from this place in New Hampshire near where my family is, and I sat there the entire month. I swear to God, I did 65 hours a week of knitting, and I made this entire sweater over the break. But I didn't really know about checking it for size or, holding it up to you or anything like that. So I got done with the sweater, and it was so beautiful, and I put it on, and I looked terrible in it. It was just bulky. It was, the sleeves were a little too short in some places. And so I put it in my closet, and and didn't get rid of it. And like, that was 1997 or something like that. And then 3 years ago, when I was moving or reorganizing, I came across it again, and I was like, oh, this is such beautiful yarn. I wonder if maybe I could like reblock it or something. And I put the sweater on. I'm like, no, it still just fits terribly. And I was like, oh, but you know what I can do is I could unknit this entire sweater and remake a new pattern. So I unknit the whole thing, all these balls, found a new pattern, knit it, checked it for size this time, like got the body of it done, and I was like, nope, it's the wrong size. I undid the whole thing again.
Oh, no, man.
Then redid it. So now it fits and it's done, and that was, it's like 15 to 18 years later, remaking it about 2.5 times.
I was going to say, it's like your boulder that you're pushing up the hill.
Totally. No, but it's one of my favorites now, and I also love the fact that I was like, I undid this sweater and redid it so many times.
Yeah. Well, now you wear it with pride, right? You're like, hey, look at the sweater.
That's right. In California, there's a big need for a long-sleeved, heavy-duty wool sweater.
Well, continuing in, like, you said you were drawing around 10 years old and stuff, and going into, say, junior high and high school, were you still doing art? Was that like your kind of creative
Absolutely.
pursuit?
So there were good art classes where it was still very integrated, and so I learned how to do like architectural drafting, almost like from multi-point perspectives, and we were doing ceramics, and I had a lot of encouragement from the art teachers because I was just really into it. And then at the same time, my parents also allowed me to take after-school art classes and painting classes, and I really felt lucky. Like I found some really good teachers there, and then at the same time, getting into high school, they had photography and ceramics and drawing, and I did all of those classes, and then started to do theater as well. Started acting at that point. There was a really strong drama program at my high school, and the show they would do farces. They loved to do comedies and farces, and that was the teacher felt that was a really good way for kids to learn about theater and timing and discipline and all that kind of stuff.
Do you have a favorite show that you did in high school?
Oh, well, the first one that I was in was, and they were always British farces. Well, I guess if it's a farce, usually it's British. Was called It Runs in the Family. And it was a ridiculous show that took place in a hospital, and it was about, illegitimate children and misunderstandings, of course, as they all are. And I played a really mean, really fat matron, which was a nurse, they cast me, I guess, because I could do like a passable British accent, and the drama teacher, I'm sure, like saw something in me, but I really had a hard time like projecting. I didn't really understand, like I needed so much help, and but they really stuck with me, and so I think I really love that show because it was so much work, and it was so hard for me to sort of get into it or grasp it that way.
Yeah. When you did you go to college?
Yes.
And did you continue art stuff?
I picked a school that had a strong liberal arts program, a really strong drama program, and a strong studio art program as well. That was definitely wanted to. And by that point too, I actually kind of knew I was interested in puppetry. I got into it probably my junior or senior year of high school. And
I don't mean to interrupt you, but what was it that got you into puppetry?
Oh, I think it was, I had a bunch of wacky high school friends that had old videotapes of the Muppets, and they were always watching it. And then I think at that time too, maybe Nick at Night was showing reruns of the Muppet Show. This would have been like the mid-90s. And I sort of was reminded about how much I loved the Muppets when I was a kid. I mean, I used to adore the Muppet Show, the reruns they'd have in the mornings, like if I'd be homesick or something. And just like it was this sort of epiphany where it was like, wow, puppets are kind of this thing. You can make stuff, and so you can be creative, but then you get to perform with them too. It's sort of always described it as like the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup moment, take them together and you get this thing that's even better.
Yeah.
So I got interested in it, but then I had no idea how to pursue it in New Hampshire. And my parents were always like cutting out little articles in the paper from Boston or something if they saw that this artist or that artist would be there. And I ended up taking a workshop, I think, of puppetry at the local art center, and I was like 17. I was definitely the only kid over the age of 10,
Right.
And the lady that was teaching the people how to make puppets, but she was super nice. Like I was older, she saw it, I was actually really into it, and so I kind of kept in touch with her. And there was somebody else there too who I think he was actually like a clown, and he had his daughter there, and he had actually mentioned to me like, oh, well, there's a puppetry program at the University of Connecticut. And I was like, nope, I had no idea about that. And this, of course, was still, like I said, the 90s, so you couldn't really look anything up on the internet and find out about it. So it was kind of a rumor, but I just sort of pursued a theater and liberal arts degree in college, as opposed to trying harder to find out about the University of Connecticut's puppetry school.
And were you, like in college and even a little bit after college, were you creating your own shows or creating your own pieces and art?
Yeah, so in college I took directing classes, and we had to make work up, and I also was saying that I was interested in puppetry, and they were like, okay, well, how do you want to do that, or what aspect would you like to do with that? And then I did actually end up going to the University of Connecticut puppetry program as a visiting student for a semester. So from there, I was able to meet some artists and students who were working on stuff, and I think we took like a survey of American puppetry, a history class, and we were making some sort of TV puppets for a class, learning monitor skills. And there was actually a Chinese rod performance class, and they also let me do an independent study. So I was making shows for that, and then I went to Skidmore College, and so making stuff there. And then my senior thesis project, I kind of had a concentration in costuming and directing and studio art, and I made a one-act show and directed it and built a bunch of puppets and had all these students perform in it. And so I think I definitely was like, still interested, want to keep doing this, and had met a bunch of working artists in New York by that time as well, through UConn, and then going to the National Puppetry Conference in Connecticut that summer too, and people that were making their own shows, and that was very encouraging, and just was like, yep, okay, great, I'm going to move to New York once I finish college and just try to keep making shows. And New York is a great, certainly at the time, was a great atmosphere for doing work in theater and making avant-garde or small shows or slams that way, but then also trying to sort of pursue a commercial career too, both as a builder and as a performer.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I always admire and respect about your work is that not only, when people think puppets, they think the Muppets and everything, but you really do, you work in like all these different styles of puppets, and you seem to really enjoy and embrace different styles of puppetry. And like, I know you worked with Jane Henson on her Nativity, which wasn't necessarily, it wasn't the Muppets. It was a completely different thing. So do you enjoy working in all those different styles of puppetry?
Absolutely. I think something, my mother, I think, is a strong believer. So I do a lot of my work for theater I do in the style of tabletop puppetry, which are kind of like glorified dolls, and my mom is like, it's the Barbies. But yeah, so that's something that I really connect with. I think studying performance that way, you can have it be verbal or nonverbal, but they're very expressive characters to have on stage, and so I think a lot of the work that I was creating that way, my own shows, were in that style, and that is sort of why I got tapped by Henson and to help build the Jane's puppets for the Nativity show, and then ultimately they were familiar with my performance style as well. Jane had supported me a lot on and off over the years to use her rehearsal space in New York, the Carriage House, and they'd helped do a lot of works in progress there and like to showcase it. And she had, as early as 2000 or 2001 or something, I had been working there on and off through Jane's sort of awareness. But tabletop puppetry is a style of puppetry that I've connected to for a long time. I also did a lot of training with Sandglass Theater up in Vermont, Eric Bass and Inez Bass, and I find it highly expressive, and it can be funny. I mean, I do like to do adult theater puppet shows, but I certainly find that comedy and tragedy, or comedy and drama, they go hand in hand. Like, you can't really, I don't like shows that are so stock serious that you have to sort of, in order to get them to cry, you have to get them to laugh first, and things like that, and you kind of want to go on a journey with but I think it's also more like the abstract or the nonlinear is really appealing to me in theater that way. Really strong visuals that sort of speak to people on a level like, I don't know exactly what just happened, but something really weird. Like I just felt it deeply, and I think music works in the same way as good puppet theater. Bad puppet theater also works in the same way that bad music works. You can feel so uncomfortable if you're seeing something live that you're just feeling like you don't connect to. But it's the big risk, isn't it, of going to the theater, going to see something live.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask about Jane, just because you brought up, you talked about working with Jane. I think a lot of people, the world knows Jim Henson, and they know that he was an amazing puppeteer, and I only met Jane very briefly, and I only knew her. She would not know who I was, but I met her a couple times. But she really was like this amazing puppet, person that people just think, oh, it's Jim Henson's wife, But so what was it like working with Jane or working around Jane, with puppets?
Well, right. I think she was kind of this very low-key puppet guru. I wouldn't say she was soft-spoken, because she definitely had strong opinions about it, but she would be very low-key and just kind of be around and be supportive or show up for things. I mean, she was a huge supporter of the National Puppetry Conference, and a lot of it, so much of it continues today, then through her kids and the Henson Foundation as well. But she was really great, I think, at giving advice and teaching workshops and making connections for puppet artists that she felt like they had a voice or were trying to get further along, and she'd say, oh, you should talk to this person. Or the last time I had a chance to work at the Carriage House when she was still around was, I guess, 2011, and she would come by and just during the day when we were rehearsing or building stuff, and she would kind of just hang out, and there was another guy there, a longtime Henson photographer named John Barrett, who would be around. He would use that studio, and they would sort of chit chat about the old days. And then she'd kind of wander in to the rehearsal space, and I think she really enjoyed, staying connected to the generations that were continuing to make work and continuing to be active that way. I get the sense, I think, she had some pride in being able to facilitate these opportunities for people, because a lot of people have ideas, but it's hard to get the space to rent in New York and find the time to pay people for rehearsals, which you usually don't get to do, and all that sort of thing. So that combined with when we built the tabletop puppets for her nativity show, and we were working in the workshop at Henson, and we're talking about, and we're having a meeting with Jane and with Heather, who was sort of helping to facilitate this build, and we're talking about, well, who's gonna, what are these faces gonna look like on the Mary and Joseph and Elizabeth puppets? And I think Jason Weber, who runs the shop at Henson there, said to Jane, like, well, Jane, why don't you come in and sculpt them? And she was like, okay, I guess I could do that. So that's a memory that's definitely going to stick with me. Like, I'm building these bodies, and we're talking about the designs, and she's just sitting next to me sculpting these faces, and she hadn't done that for so long. Yeah. And she's clearly, a couple of years later, when we then staged it for TV, I think Cheryl or Heather brought in all this artwork that Jane had been doing. She was very, very interested in the nativity story and the nativity characters, and there was all these sculptures of things that she had done. So that was really great to see. And she was like, they were talking about a story when she was in college. Like, I think she did a nativity scene, and she actually had dug all this clay out of the earth somewhere around Maryland or Washington, D.C. that had been from a church that had been torn down or something like that. So it was actually consecrated ground that she was then incorporating into these projects. So it was really fun to see Jane Henson as an artist herself, and what her passions brought to that, in addition to just all of the last name being associated with Jim Henson and that part.
Yeah.
She was a real arts supporter.
Yeah. Well, you are someone who, as we just mentioned, you worked with tabletop puppetry. You've worked with sort of the Muppet-style puppetry that people are very familiar with. But you've also puppeteered ginormous puppets, both with Walking with Dinosaurs and also the Olympics.
Yes.
The Sochi Olympics.
Sochi Olympics.
Right. Those big giant things. So you have done puppets of all sizes, but I want to talk about what's it like puppeteering these big giant creatures.
Super fun.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I can say. I mean, just obviously, right? I mean, of course they're super fun. But the company that built them out of Australia, the Creature Technology Company, they come from a film and television background in terms of their animatronics and their controls, and pay a lot of attention to, as a puppeteer, what you can do. And then it's also teams of performers. So it's not like one man, one dinosaur. So you're working as a group, and that's a real fun combination as well, getting to work with your team and getting very comfortable. But getting to do that dinosaur show, I mean, I think I worked on it. I've worked on it on and off for 5 years or something, and we would do 10 shows a week or something like that. And people are like, wouldn't you get, I'm like, that's a lot of shows. And I'm like, it is, but it's a different audience every time. And like to see the audiences react to these giant creatures like walking through the iris of the stage, and they're making these beautiful noises, and it's certainly as real as dinosaurs we're going to get. And it was a kind of an unbelievable opportunity. I went to the audition years ago when they were having them in New York, and at the time I was like, I don't know if this is actually a job. I'm never going to get this job, but I want to get in on this audition because I just want to see what the heck these creatures are. Like, I had seen some ads for it, and I was like, I kind of rejected it visually. I was like, I don't understand what I'm seeing. It looks too real. So that was all that was in my mind when I went to the audition. It was just like, I want to see how these things work and what they do. And yeah, it's been amazing, and got to travel all over the world for a long time. And then, yeah, obviously it segued into that job with the Olympics. That company also did that show King Kong, which played only in Australia, but that was an amazing puppet that they created as well on that scale. And I think they have a new museum show that's actually coming to the States very soon called Jurassic World. I think it's going to be playing in Philadelphia and coming. But yeah, they're a really fun company because they care so much about performance as well as just getting it to work.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, I remember when we went to Australia with Puppet Up.
Right.
We toured the, I don't know, workshop or
CCC,
whatever you want to call it.
yeah.
And they even let us try one of the dinosaurs. This is pretty amazing.
Yeah,
this is amazing.
I mean, they really are. They are super fun. And then they also did the How to Train Your Dragon live show as well. So that was also. And
you traveled. You
worked on that one.
But you were like in China, I think, or.
So yes, we did Australia and New Zealand first. We did a short tour in the U.S. and then we worked in Beijing for about 6 months.
Yeah,
trying to put it up there. Yeah, funny tent in the Olympic Park in China. That was an experience. But again, getting to work with those characters, and I got to work on Toothless, which was a really fun puppet as well. And that was interesting too, because a little more acting and character work with a puppet. How to Train Your Dragon. Those dragons had personalities. In the dinosaur show, they're really trying to keep it as these are animals. They don't react to like the audience, or they're not mugging to anybody. You're getting to see dinosaurs, and then dragons are like, all bets are off. You kind of get to have fun.
Yeah, I remember what the guy said. One of the guys at Creature Technology Company said that whenever there's some new scientific breakthrough about dinosaurs, they will change the dinosaur to make it as accurate as possible.
Yeah, so between tours, the last time I had worked on it, then and then in 2015 it was another tour. They added feathers to the T-Rexes and to the raptors and stuff like that, and that was a really interesting thing. I was like, this thing's getting heavier. I'm not sure, but they do alter them. I think that's a nice choice on their part. Well, they do have to be refurbed anyway. They part of the success of that show is kind of how much care and maintenance they performed on them. But yeah, absolutely admirable that they would also pay attention to the science.
Yeah. Well, currently, don't necessarily say exactly what you're working on, but you worked with the Muppets on the last Muppet series.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
And then, you're currently working on stuff for the Jane Henson Company. And you are someone who maybe the public at large doesn't know, a puppet wrangler, but you're somebody who can do both, where you're also a puppeteer, but a puppet wrangler is somebody who helps maintain the puppets on set and make sure that they're ready to go. And you're also a builder. And I think for the Jim Henson Company, it seems like you're kind of doing all of these things, pretty much a little bit of each and everything. Do you find that, would you rather just be doing one, or do you enjoy doing all three?
I love doing all of them, certainly. I think creatively it's fun to be able to bounce around. I think it serves maybe also the part of your brain that can sometimes get tired of doing one thing, and you get a chance to get out of the shop and get on set and work that way. I've always loved the pace of working on set, kind of tackling something, moving along, and performing as well. I think probably wouldn't mind if I was doing a bit more performing. It's good to not let those muscles get rusty,
right.
Literally, figuratively. I'm really very fortunate and very happy that I've been so busy working as a wrangler and a builder. I think it's probably just showing me it's time to maybe make one of my own shows for a while, or start something.
Well, that's what I was going to say is, you're saying like, oh, you kind of want to perform, but you still do your own shows. I mean, at least I know you did a Puppet Slam recently.
That was my West Coast debut, actually, or my Los Angeles debut. Yes, I did a short slam piece of mine.
Yeah. Do you have a show in your head that you don't have to say details, but are you working on something in your head that?
Well, I think the sad thing is, I don't know why exactly. I have like 2 ideas that I've been sitting on for like 5 to 8 years, which is like a terrible thing. I'm like, oh, they're both going to be so great. One's a little video project. One's kind of a slightly like a live show combined with an installation. And yeah, I'm just not really doing anything about it. So I gotta fix that. I think the tough thing in some ways is when you get to live your dream all day long, like building puppets and working on that stuff. Like sometimes you just don't really want to do that when you get home.
Right.
So it sucks that your passion is also your income and your day job, but not really.
But it's incredibly fun to work. Like I don't think we're saying like, oh, I have to be a puppeteer.
No,
we love it.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, you are doing it all day, and then it's like, I just want to sit down.
Well, right. Or like, yeah, I want to watch TV. But because creativity, like you do have to store some of it up a bit in order to continue to put it out there. But I've been really lucky. Some other folks that I've made contact with since I moved here, which I've been here just about a year. Halloween was my 1-year anniversary. But they were working on some short puppet film projects, and that was a lot of fun to have a chance to work on something creative, but not that I was not in charge of, that it was a smaller scale and sort of play around with. So that's been good, and that's sort of gotten me thinking like, all right, I've got to move on these. So I did actually pull out the box that had the puppet in it that I've been building. Like there's no reason it should take me 4 years, but it's not done yet. but it's very close, and I was like, oh, this is right. I remember now. Okay.
Right.
Put this together.
Yeah. You unknit the sweater and
you
knit it back up again.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, as we wrap up here, if people wanted to check you out online, where can they go?
I do have a website, which I need to update, but it's somewhat recent. AmandaMaddock.com is my website. And from there I have blog and these things. Oh, but the terrible part about my website is it's not currently mobile enabled, so you can't actually look at it. So that's the big part. But if you were on a desktop or a laptop computer, you could go to www.amandamaddock.com.
All right. Well, I will put a link to that in the show notes. And Amanda, thank you so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
Amanda Maddock is a puppeteer, puppet builder, and puppet artist, and you can see more of her work over at amandamaddock.com. That's AMANDAMADDOCK.com. 15 Minutes With on the GrantCast is a production of Saturday Morning Media and made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've gone to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a monthly donation for as little as $1 a month. Huge thanks to Shay Stewart, Merle Lafferty, Jeff Peterson, Dale Gadania, Stephen Staver, Jackie Klimo, Melissa Crawford, Chuck, Matthew Wayne Selznick, Dave Slusher of the Evil Genius Chronicles, Mike Conflin, Dorothy Baciocco, John D., Kathy Crawford, Brian Greer, Carrie Whitney, Chuck Tomasi, Chris Foster, Stephen Ing, Clinton of ComedyForecast.com, Vicky DeVries, Mike Wobschall, Twitter user Butzengear, aka Wildcat, Eve Cunning, Mike Hamilton, Gaston Morino, Reed Loveland, and Ivan Asquith. If you would like to hear your name on a podcast and support this show and the other fun content from Saturday Morning Media, become a patron. Head on over to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up your monthly donation today. You can also tell a friend about the show or leave this show a review on iTunes. And while you're over there on iTunes, be sure to click that subscribe button. That way, you'll get episodes the moment they're released. If you have any feedback for this show, you can send it directly to me at grant@throwingtoasters.com, or you can get in touch via Twitter, where my username is ToasterBoy. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time. The GrantCast is copyright 2016 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Baciocco, executive producer, all rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.